What's up, everybody? My name's Brad Montgomery. Lucky you. You're here. And lucky me, because we have a really fun guest. I hope you're doing okay. Are you? Are you
I'm
okay?
doing great. I'm doing great.
Have you been washing your hands, Andrew?
Every 5 minutes.
I've got as my guest Andrew Hudson. He has done a million things. He's been in the corporate world, but famously worked for a U.S. senator. He worked for Frontier Airlines. He was their spokesperson, I think, communications dude. Spokesperson for RTD, which is the Colorado bus transportation people. And right now he's doing something completely not related to any of those things. He runs a job list. He runs Craigslist that to help. Andrew, how do you describe your job list?
Well, it's a job board, and it's very geographically based for Colorado. So, what my goal was 22 years ago when I started this was thinking about how do you connect the best employers with the best professionals, and how do you do that in such a way that it's helpful to everybody.
Um, well, it works, and I'm going to ask you all about it. But there's right there. Hold on, I'm going to grab some questions. Andrew, here's my plan. My plan is to start at the end. Here's what I've learned. When first started interviewing Andrew, it turned out the last part of the interview was the best part of the interview. So we're going to start there. With your permission, I'm going to ask you some questions that are not about Andrew Hudson's job list
Perfect.
and not about your experience. And your job is, if you choose to accept it, don't think about the answers. Do you accept?
I accept.
No thinking. What are you watching on Netflix right now?
Oh, no, it's not. That's HBO Max. What
Well,
was I watching on
what are you
Netflix?
watching on Max?
Well, I was watching The Flight Attendant,
Oh yeah.
and it's okay. I mean, I was it was very intriguing the first couple episodes, but I'm kind of getting tired of it.
Do you find that your standards for TV have dropped because of the pandemic?
No, I think they've risen. I mean, there's so much out there that I'm very into reading the reviews of people that I trust that are going to lead me into the right path in terms of what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, I find myself sometimes doing that, and sometimes I'm looking for brainless. I find myself watching things I would never anticipate myself watching. Can you say Survivor? Okay, I admitted it. Like Survivor?
I watched Emily in Paris,
Yeah,
which is
that's
total
right.
total
Super low.
brain candy.
But
But you need that.
I've heard someone describe that, Andrew, as ambiance TV, where it's just kind of you can get up and pee or go get a cup of tea, and you haven't missed much.
That's a good way to put it. I did like the one about the chess chick.
Oh yeah, uh,
What's it called?
Gambit.
The
Uh,
Queen's Gambit.
Gambit.
The
Yeah,
Queen's Gambit.
yeah, I
I
love
thought
that
that
show.
was terrific.
Um, what's your favorite beverage lately?
Manhattans.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the secret to a Manhattan if you're Andrew Hudson?
Well, I'm probably making it all wrong, but it's very easy. 2 shots of whiskey, rye, 1 shot of vermouth, a little bit of bitters, shake it up and pour it over ice. And then there is this very fancy Italian maraschino cherry that costs like $25 a bottle. And that's the key right there. You can't just use a regular maraschino cherry.
And that little
Now,
syrup that comes with the cherries. I love
yes,
that.
yes, a little bit of that too. I will tell you though, the thing I'm asking for Christmas is there's this ice tray that makes big square ice cubes like
Mm,
about that big.
yeah,
And that's I think that's a lot better than the smaller ice cubes because it doesn't melt as quick and dilute the drink.
I like Manhattans also, and I think when it's a little bit melty, that's good. Just a little bit. I'm okay with little
Yeah.
melty. So we grew up together. You and I, we went camping. I think our parents drank Manhattans, Andrew, together. I'm almost positive.
But they call them drinky poos.
my, they did. I didn't know that until I think your big brother told me. We would, Dad would come home from work. This was a typical day, and then we'd go, and it was cocktail time for Mom and Dad. and they had a big brandy snifter. I swear it was like a goldfish bowl, and they would mix Manhattans in that and dole them out. And I didn't know until fairly recently how much freaking booze that is. My parents were trashed by dinner. Had to be.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, one Manhattan and you're good for the evening.
Did your did your parents drink around you when you were growing up, aside from camping trips, like on a typical work week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
I kind of got I was like, I couldn't figure out, my dad loved Manhattans and I couldn't figure it out. And then it was like, I mean, as you get older, you become more refined in terms of what you like. And you have, it's like when you're young and you taste something like that, you're going, oh my God, that's disgusting. It tastes like gasoline. But as you get older, I mean, you start to, I don't know if it's a sad thing that you start getting used to the taste of certain things, but you start to kind of understand what you like and what you don't like.
For the record, I'm not sure how refined we are if our favorite part of the Manhattan is that cherry juice. Just saying.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was at the university club with your dad, and he ordered a Manhattan, and I remember him saying, "A little heavy on the vermouth." Sound like your dad? A little heavy, a little bit more pink.
Well, whenever you travel, do you always try and figure out what is like the local drink?
Well, that seems like a really good idea. I'm kind of embarrassed to say, no, I haven't thought of that good idea. Do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, well, Mexico, it's obvious, but we went to Spain a couple of years ago. In Valencia, they drink vermouth straight on
Yeah.
ice,
How is
and
that?
well, it's a very different kind. It's a very citrusy kind of vermouth, and it's very sweet. But yeah, it was great. I don't think I would do that here, but there it was like perfect.
Are you drinking more in the pandemic, or maybe you don't want to answer?
Just to tell you the truth, no, I've actually, Christine and I have been working out a lot, and we've been trying to really be a lot more health minded. So we do our best to try and do the Monday through Thursday dry, and then we'll open up a little bit on Friday and Saturday.
I think it's so adorable that you remember what a weekend is. I, I'm so completely jealous. All right, so we're in your car. You and I, we get in your car. The stereo turns on. What would we be listening to?
Um, well, most likely KUVO, the jazz station,
Hmm.
NPR. Every once in a while, I'll turn it to the far right talk radio stations just to hear what's the other side is thinking. And right now, KOSI, because all they play is Christmas music.
So wait. You turn to KOSI to listen to 24/7 Christmas music,
Oh, absolutely. And then we have Sirius in one of our cars,
right?
and they have like 4 or 5 Christmas stations. So those are all programmed right now.
I kind of like you a little bit more because of that answer. Because I listen to KOSI, but some of those arrangements, Andrew, are the like most straightforward, uninteresting arrangements, and I find myself just eating them up.
Yeah, I know. I do too. I love hearing new arrangements of Christmas music, especially in jazz. But I'm sick and tired of Mariah Carey's song, "All I Want for Christmas," and the George Michael one. And when you go, "Hey Google, play Christmas music," that's like the first two that come on, and you're like, "Skip, skip, skip."
Yeah,
But
if I
all
never
the old songs, I love them.
if I never hear Feliz Navidad again, that would be okay with me. That was never a good song.
Yeah, I agree. The band I played with, well, I play with still. We during the holidays, Freddie plays a lot of Latinized Christmas carols, so we have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that does sound fun. So you kind of hinted your news source is NPR. How do you get the news?
I'm a newsaholic. I mean, I've got about 10 different sites that I check regularly throughout the day. Obviously the big ones, the Washington Post and the New York Times. The only newspaper I subscribe to physically is the Wall Street Journal, so I get that every morning, which I just think it's the best newspaper in America. I get the Denver Post online, and then they send it to me in physical form Wednesday and Sunday. But the online version of the Denver Post is fantastic. I mean, it's a replica version. Then there's other little more fringe things like the Drudge Report. I mean, you can capture everything that's going on in America right there. And then there's another site called Politico.
Yeah.
Um, there's another local one called Colorado Politics, which I really like. And then there's more of a right wing one called Complete Colorado, and they're kind of like the Colorado version of the Drudge Report. But I'm a pretty middle of the road guy, but I absorb news all the time, just crazy. It drives my wife crazy too.
Does it? I find in spurts when I get super involved with the news, it affects my mood, especially lately with racial tensions and crazy politics and climate warming and pandemics. It totally affects my mood. Are you able to like come back to your wife and be in a great mood, or after you read something that makes you crazy?
Yeah, I mean, it got that way this summer, and I mean, we were just finding ourselves. Every conversation was, could you believe Trump did this? Or, and we kind of had to just, take a break from everything Trump. It was driving us crazy. And I think, more recently, it's exciting. I mean, reading the news about how these scientists came up with these vaccines.
Yeah.
And, there's so many stories of resilience, and there's stories of people that are, attacking the COVID in different ways. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it's tough out there for so many people, but there's a lot of optimism out there too.
Yeah, I agree. All right, random questions continuing. Favorite pop music? Pop. Oh, did I lose you? All right, hold on, everybody. Andrew, I just lost Andrew, but I know he's going to come right back in. Here's what to expect from... Oh, here he is. Here's what to expect. He's a job pro, and we're going to ask him all about that. Boom. Hey, how are you? I've missed you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No sweat. It worked out. I was just telling them how awesome you are. Favorite pop music?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Pop music.
Do I get the impression it's been a while?
No, I mean, I consider pop music as some of my favorite '80s bands, like The Police and U2, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and stuff like that. I mean, I just don't listen to it a lot. My kids listen to it all the time, and there's this one station on Sirius that is just everything just sounds the same songs over and over and over. I feel like an old fuddy-duddy, but I don't know.
Yeah, you are a little bit of a... Oh, how do you feel about Taylor Swift?
She's amazingly talented, just incredibly talented, and I haven't heard her new album, but people that I trust, and musically, they think it's absolutely fantastic. I will tell you one thing, and this was actually a great story, and you might have even known her. So a couple of years ago, I was watching the Super Bowl, and Beyonce was doing the halftime show. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this guitar player comes screaming out onto stage, and she has flames and sparks flying out of her guitar, and she's just killing this solo. And it was a friend of mine from high school. Her name is BB McGill, an African American lady that we used to sit there in her garage and learn how to play Led Zeppelin songs together, and play AC/DC songs together, and then we were like in all the high school musicals together, and we were in jazz band together, and then she left. She was a year older than me, and I never really kept up with her, and apparently she went to LA and found her fame and fortune.
Did you call her up and say, where'd you get that gig? I want that gig.
Pretty much, I did. I reached out to her on Facebook, and I looked her name up on Google, which is what you do, and she's like a yoga queen. She's been on like the cover of Yoga Monthly, and she has her own line of kale chips, BB's kale chips, and then she's also the lead guitarist for Beyonce. So
yeah, that's so weird when you find people from our past who do that.
Yeah, totally.
Andrew, when was the first time as a young adult? So this is post-college, you're working. When did you, tell us about a time when you remember when you thought, oh, I'm pretty good at this? Because it happens for different times. You're a very successful adult, but when did you first start to see that maybe that was going to happen?
Well, on the flip side of that, I think what first happened was I realized I wasn't as good as I thought as I was at some things. And so I wanted to be a jazz musician. And, as much as I loved playing, I didn't like practicing. And that was, I had skills and I was an okay jazz musician, but I really had to have a talk with myself about whether or not that was really going to be my life doing that. And so then I started thinking, okay, so what are the transferable skills I have as a jazz musician that could apply to something else?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a degree in English, and I was a good writer, and I knew how to improvise, so I could think quick on my feet, and I could think creatively with other people to solve problems. In jazz, it's obviously musical problems and musical things that are going on right at the moment. And all of that stuff kind of came together when I decided to try and get into politics. And I got an internship with Senator Tim Wirth, and it was a very interesting thing. It was like all of a sudden lightning struck, and it was like, wow, I'm good at this. It's like all those things that I understood as a jazz musician were actually very helpful to me.
That's amazing that I didn't know that. I can't believe I haven't asked you, but because you are a beast in music. It's so interesting to hear you say, maybe I don't have it. Because from my position, I just think you're amazing.
Well, as I've grown and I'm still a professional musician. I don't consider myself a full-time musician, but I loved my music program in high school, and I loved my music program in college, and I got to learn so much and hang out with great teachers. But the one thing that they don't tell you is that, oh, and by the way, you're going to be having to hustle every week to get $300 or $400 gigs. And it's a tough life. And I totally admire people who do it. And I know people that, in addition to that, they do other things and they make it work. But I also know musicians who are some of my favorite musicians in the world who, at the end of a gig, if the club owner has left and hasn't paid the band and they say the check's in the mail, they need $10 in gas money to get home.
Right.
I mean, it's a tough thing. I admire artists and I admire musicians who have completely committed themselves to that. But I think early on it was both a sense of whether or not that was a life I wanted, and it was a life that I could actually do, and I was committed enough to do it.
When I was in high school, when we were in high school, I wanted to be a professional musician, and I wasn't nearly the player you are. But I was in a drum lesson.
You're damn good.
And the drum teacher, I might have been like junior or senior in high school, and the drum teacher, who was, with hindsight, amazing. What do you want to do, Brad? Oh, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be a musician because I want to be like you. This guy was just, he could have said, Brad, here, have some meth. I would have taken it. He just was such a personality. But happily, he was a good role model. Anyway, I want to be a musician. And he said, oh, I just remember him saying, just his body language. And then he said, look at me. In the daytime, I work in a drum store selling drumsticks and cymbals to people that don't know how to use them. And here I am in a shopette teaching you how to play drums, which I like you, but I have a wife and kid I'm not with right now. And guess where I'm playing this weekend? And I didn't know. And he said, I'm playing with a country band. Brad, I'm playing country music. That was a very informative 15-minute conversation.
Yeah. And on the other hand, it's like you see my sister and my brother-in-law, and, they've pursued a path of being symphonic musicians. And, Kathy does incredible things, playing freelance stuff for TV shows, and she's an on-call musician doing all kinds of great stuff. And she's a beloved violin teacher, and, they make it work. but it's there's different paths, I guess, for it.
Yeah, I hear you. I th- it, Same thing with my job. I hang out with a lot of comedians and magicians, and there's a lot of them that just get excited and they don't realize that you have to figure out the business side too. Like being good is only part of the puzzle. Um, let's let's jump into jobs.
Uh-huh.
You have a perspective on employment that the rest of us don't have. You're thinking about it and writing about it and connecting people who have and want jobs. How bad is it out there?
Um, well, we were at full employment. Think about that. I mean, anybody who wanted a job could get a job, pretty much, back in the beginning of March. And Colorado was definitely an outlier. I mean, we were one of the top states for employment. And talk about pulling the rug out. I mean, it was just the economy got basically shut down, and it hit so many different industries. And so, I mean, it hit every industry at some level. And I saw the effects of that immediately, probably from March through June. And I was still getting jobs posted onto my website, and there were still companies that were hiring. Um, but there was a lot more people than there were jobs, a lot more unemployed people than there were jobs. And I had experience with this before. When I started my website in 1998, and it was free for everybody for 10 years. It was just a passion hobby project. And when I started it as, I started it as a full-time business in 2008, in August of 2008. And the week after I, started it, the economy fell apart, and Wall Street, the housing crisis, and all of that fell apart. And I quit my job. I mean, this was what I was going to do. I was working as a big VP at an engineering firm, and I quit. I said, "No, I'm going to do it." And the interesting thing that happened was that employers were still looking for good employees. Employers were still looking for professionals, and there were a lot of them coming to my website looking for work. And it was actually a very, very good point for me to be at, because I was a trustworthy uh, place for both employers and for job seekers. And the same thing is happening here. There's a lot of people that are looking for work, but there is still a lot of jobs out there. I mean, I right now I have about 350 jobs posted onto my website, and I only scratched the surface. I mean, that's just a percentage of the actual number of jobs in Colorado. Um, but it's so unknown right now. I tend to be this very Pollyannish optimistic kind of a guy. And I think that we are on the cusp of just this explosion of energy, excitement, innovation. I think it's similar to what happened after World War II when it ended. It's just there's this level of creativity and pent up um, determination that is going to explode in this country, and it's going to be a great thing. I would just say everyone has to hold on a little bit longer until these vaccinations really start to play into this equation.
You said there's 350 job listings right now on your site. How does that compare to March and a year ago?
Um, it's usually between about 5 to 600. So it's down. I would not totally half, but it's definitely down.
And when are we gonna? I mean, everyone wants to know when, right? When. Do you have any insight based on your expertise when those number of listings might go up? And
January. I think
okay,
that people are starting to say, okay, look, we have rounded the corner here. We're going to start to see the economy picking up. We're going to start to see once the vaccinations are back in place. And then the other thing is that I think that, quite frankly, this new environment of working from home is being taken into consideration by companies as well. There's, like I say, there's so much unknown in terms of how the economy, how businesses, how companies are all going to react in the next 6 months. This was a great experiment. I mean, so many people working from home, being on Zoom calls and getting work done. And, people would say in the past, oh, employers would never trust their employees to, be at home and, not be, watching TikTok while they're supposed to be in a meeting, or whatever. But it's going to be a very interesting thing. But there's number one, naturally, January is always a big hiring month. People are hiring for the new year. There's new budgets. There's new jobs that are available, and we're going to definitely see that. And again, the life cycle of a job is 6 to 8 weeks, a job posting, in terms of the time it's posted to the time someone is hired. So I think that's going to be a big. We're going to start seeing a lot of more forward motion starting in January.
Oh, I like hearing that. Yeah.
Well, the other question is, and I mean, this is a question for you, Brad, is your industry and your business, it really depends on people coming together, sitting shoulder to shoulder at conferences and conventions. It's same with my brother-in-law and my sister. I talked to them about, how are you planning on people not only coming to the symphony, sitting shoulder to shoulder, listening to classical music, but, also having musicians sitting shoulder to shoulder performing it.
Right.
And that could be for restaurants, that could be for sporting events, that could be for all that stuff. I'm optimistic. I think people, once that they feel like the vaccination has been proven to be safe and that it's working, that stuff is going to come back. But the business travel aspect of it is very, there's a lot of uncertainty there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you're a second violin and you're sitting in front of a trumpet, that's you're
COVID spit.
right. What about all the, we read about the hospitality industry being a shambles and the gig industry. So we talked about musicians a little bit. What about all those people? Are they able to find relief on your site? Are there jobs for them?
Not as much. I mean, my site is more the kind of white collar professional jobs that it's not so much the hourly types of jobs. There are some, but it's going to be more like if you're an accountant, you might find a job working for a restaurant there, but not so much waiters and waitresses and things like that. I'll tell you, that's the other thing about the restaurants. I don't know if you saw the article in the Denver Post the other day, but they were talking to all the different restaurant owners and just, the sleepless nights that they're going through. I mean, it's such a hard business anyway. But now they have the responsibility of all these people that they've had to lay off and things like that. Again, my optimistic side is like, those are the people that are creative and that they figure out things and they make it work, even in a hard environment as the restaurant industry is without COVID. And so my sense is that it's going to be that level of new energy and creativity that's going to, I think it's going to be very magical in the next year.
I like your optimism. So what would you say to, let me bring him in right now. No, there's nobody there. Imagine somebody comes in and they're whatever. They've been in hospitality or restaurants or worked for hotels, or they just don't have a job and they're like, Andrew, I need money. You know about jobs. What do you tell them?
Well, I think first off, I mean, the most obvious things is, taking a look at your own finances and figuring out, where do you cut the fat in terms of, what do you have? What can you liquidate? I mean, if it's a real desperate situation. Now, talking about somebody who's unemployed looking for a job, look, I'm not gonna BS here. Job seeking sucks. I mean, it's hard. It's full of rejection, and the majority of people that I've worked with looking for a job, they're not very good at it because they're never taught how to look for a job. And it's not in the days. I mean, Brad, I don't know when or if you've ever been in a situation where you've actually had to open up the newspaper and look for a job in a classified ad and then put a resume together and go do an interview and tell everyone how wonderful you are. It's a very different thing today than it was when we were just getting out of college, and the whole routine of going online and going to online job boards and then making sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. And then there's these pesky little things called applicant tracking systems. And, then you have to go in and you have to consider yourself a marketable product in the industry of job seeking. And
Ugh.
it's a hard thing, and no one really ever teaches you how to do that and how to do it well. And this idea of self-branding and taking, and I'm a huge believer in self-efficacy, and this idea of coming to terms with what you're good at and not being afraid to let someone else know that, and doing it in such a way that it's believable and it's authentic and it's real. But it's a very scary thing for people to talk about themselves. And
Yeah.
we have this idea of modesty. It's like we all need to be modest. Oh shucks, it's no big deal. And yeah, it is a big deal. Yeah, you and be proud and be of your accomplishments and your successes and all of those things. And so I'm telling people that are right now unemployed and the market's not as great, use some of that time as an opportunity to really dig into not only what it means to look for a job, but what is it you want to do? I mean, that's another thing. So many people are stuck in jobs that they hate.
Well, I got a million questions for you. Um, I have personal experience with young people who say, I would like a career where I can be helpful and change the world and save baby seals, which eliminates a lot of jobs. I'm being facetious, but they want to create positive change for the planet, and they're offered a job in the insurance industry or something, and that kills them. Do you have any advice for that generation, or those liberal arts kids saying, but?
Oh, absolutely. In Colorado alone, there's more than 20,000 registered nonprofit organizations. And those nonprofit organizations, nonprofit doesn't mean non-paycheck. Nonprofit, they serve everything from the environment to animal welfare to seniors to children to arts and culture to every kind of social fabric thing you can think about. And that's a good place to consider in terms of going out and trying to make a difference. Christine, my wife, she got a master's degree in nonprofit management from Regis, and she had started working for this organization called the Mikasa Resource Center, and then she ended up applying to become I want to say the Colorado Trust Fellow. And as a result of that, they paid for her to get her master's degree in nonprofit management. Um, and there's my only point. There's a lot of paths that you can take just within the nonprofit world itself, but the other part of it is finding a mentor. So let's say, okay, well, I want to work in corporate America, but I want to make a difference.
Right.
Um, find that person who you really admire and trust, and do something that a lot of people haven't done in a long time, which is actually write a letter. How many letters do you get? You get emails, but a handwritten letter or a typed out letter just saying, can I pick your brain for 20 minutes? Just get on the phone with you and tell you kind of where I'm at. That's a scary thing for a lot of people. It takes people out of their comfort zone. It's
Right.
like, why would they talk to me? You'd be amazed how many people will talk to you.
Yeah. That silences me thinking. I, I have people in my life who are introverted and quiet, and that combined with what you were saying is people are not used to branding themselves and standing up and saying, I'm actually pretty good at this and I would love to be good at it with you. That is just so outside of their comfort zone. I'm trying to picture them even, just if I say to my quiet kids and my quiet nephews and nieces to say, go get a mentor, they would just look at me like I would say, they'd be like, right, Uncle Brad, I'll get right on that. They wouldn't.
Well, then read a book. You know, give them a bio of somebody. There's podcasts. There's one of my favorite podcasts is called How I Built This. Have you
Oh, I
ever
love
listened
that.
to that?
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
fun.
And it's totally motivating stories, and it's just like these people who are like talking about the challenges and the problems they had getting their company started, or all of a sudden right during the middle of something there was a massive flood and it wiped out all my stores and I had to rebuild, and every single time the guy Ross, the guy who is the host, he says, well, you're right in the middle of all this turmoil and chaos and you got to make these decisions. How did you know what to do? And the answer is always the same. I had no idea. I just figured it out. I read some books. I talked to people. I tried to, we kind of made it up as we went along. Because I hear what you're saying. I mean, there are a lot of introverted people. There's a lot of people who just are like, give me a cubicle and a computer and I'm good. I don't need anything else than that. But look, I don't want to make this to sound too soundbite-ish, but if there's going to be 3 or 4 finalists that are going into a job interview. These are people that have been, they've had 3 interviews already and now they're finalists. But only one of those 4 people is going to get a job offer. And usually it's the people that can connect with the people that are interviewing them. Because at this point, all 4 of them they could do the job. I mean, it's gotten to that point where they've defined that their skills are strong enough. But it's that person who comes in and is able to, and it takes work, it takes practice. A lot of it is not natural whatsoever for them to be able to talk about themselves. And so when I've done mock interviews with people, I've said to them, all right, tell me about your skills. And they say, oh, well, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, I'm good at this. And okay, tell me some other things about your, about some of the things that you've done and so forth and so on. But then I'll ask them one question that changes it completely. Tell me about your most proud accomplishment. And all of a sudden, it's just like mind-blowing. It's like all of a sudden their description of a project or a success in their life becomes completely animated, and they remember details that they didn't remember in anything else they did. And they start remembering how it was that they got a raise from that project, or they were able to increase sales, or they were able to, convince their staff to be inspired to follow their dream of this idea or whatever. And so a lot of it is, thinking about it in different ways and being able to talk about that. And again, it does take some practice, but there are strategies. And, I'll say one other thing because I know I'm just kind of droning on. But the strategies of I've studied the strategies of successful job seekers, and successful job seekers are typically very focused. So they know what it is that they want to do, which is a big question. You ask somebody, what do you want to do? It's like, oh my gosh, I could do this, I could do that. No, the successful job seekers are saying, this is what I want to do. And once they have that focus, then they can start looking at different avenues in terms of how do they pursue that. And different avenues being job titles, different avenues being networking and calling people that they know are part of that particular field that they want. The other thing is they do have this sense of red hot confidence. And it's not arrogance. It's not this, like I call them 2 extremes. There's this extreme of complete, oh my gosh, I don't know what to answer. But you know what? I can do anything. Just tell me what it is, and I promise I will learn. And that's that extreme of desperation. And then there's this other extreme of, oh, you know what? I should actually probably have your job. And it's that sense of arrogance.
Yeah, super cocky.
But then there's this thing right in the middle of it all. It's red hot confidence, and people respond to confidence. It's not bragging. It's, look, I did this, I did that. This is how my experiences and my talents can help you at your company as well.
Well, that opens like 25 different questions. Before I am going to come back and ask you about confidence. But there's a thing that I wanted to ask you about. My job is I'm constantly trying to get that next gig, like we were talking about earlier. And so I'm used to the problem of, oh, how do I get that person to listen to me or open my email or notice me? And that feels normal to me. But yet when I talk to people, I remember even 20 years ago, so even before the internet was as crazy as it is now, talking to a friend who said, oh, no, I've sent my resume in, so that's all. I'll just be waiting. And I'm thinking, oh, holy cow, what do you mean you're not going to do something to get your resume opened and noticed and a big arrow pointing towards it? So like my thing is like send a singing telegram, not literally, but as a metaphor, like freaking, what is it going to take? Nobody thinks that's normal. So if I talk to my kids and my nephews and my nieces and I say, what do you mean you put it on Andrew Hudson's job list and Indeed and that's all you did? What's your take on that? Calling the manager, finding who knows who, or I don't know, sending him a package, doing something.
Yeah. So, no, there is a lot of false hope with job boards, mine included, with the idea that all you have to do is send in your resume and then somebody will read it. And when I talked about, you've got to recognize that rejection is a
Right.
common part of the job search. And rejection comes in a lot of different ways. There's those a-holes employers who don't respond at all when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into a resume and a cover letter, and you're the perfect fit, and you've got it all figured out, and you don't hear a word. And that is so frustrating, probably the number one frustration of job seekers. And then there's also the rejection of being interviewed, but then not being called back, or being a finalist, but not getting the job. There's all of those things. And, you know, one of the problems with rejection is we don't know why we were rejected. And so we make these assumptions. We make these assumptions that, oh, it must be something about me. It's like, and then I hear the things of, oh, I'm too old. I'm overqualified. I'm underqualified. I wanted too much money. I didn't ask for enough. They didn't take me seriously. My interview sucks. I mean, all of these things that start coming into us, and I call it stinking thinking. And what it does, it starts to mold our perceptions of ourselves into where we all of a sudden start dumbing down ourselves, and all of a sudden we start thinking about ourselves, and you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, and that person staring back at you is not the person that you thought it was, or the person on your resume. It's not that same person. It's this person who's too old, too young, too this, too that, too that. And so I so encourage people to get away from that. Now back to your question, because this is an important one. Send in a resume, follow all the rules that are part of the job thing. If they want a cover letter, write a cover letter. But don't just write a cover letter that says, "Dear sir, as you can see by my resume, I have a lot of experience and I'd be a good fit for this job. I look forward to hearing from you." No. Do the research about the company, about the people. There's so much information out there on the internet. I mean, you can go and find out about what the company goals are for the next 3 years. You can find out, who did the person that you're going to be applying to this job for, you can find out what he had for breakfast. I mean, there's so much information out there that you can then craft a cover letter that is so tied and differentiated to make them take notice of you and who you are. And you can be funny and you can be clever. I mean, not too much, not to the degree that they won't take you seriously,
Right.
but something that's going to grab their attention. Now, I remember I was up at a company once and I was giving a talk, and somebody took me by the employee break room. And this is an advertising firm where, creativity is, what you want to prove. Somebody had done an entire resume spelled out on a cake. And it was so cool and it was so clever. And I'm like, well, they must have at least gotten an interview. And they were like, no, I mean, just, they didn't have it wasn't like what we were looking for. And we had other people that, definitely were more in line with what. And I was just thinking of as how, either you're a really good baker or you've got a lot of money to buy resume cakes. But
I would totally have brought that person in and want to meet them.
Yeah, I know. And but the other thing is networking, which is, I just can't overstate it. I mean, it's one of those things that's like people are like, huh, what's networking? We all have connections, and we all have, and LinkedIn kind of helped us understand this, first degree, second degree, third degree, so forth and so on. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with calling up a friend, a former colleague, a former boss, people. I call this your first tier of networking. These are your cheerleaders, the people who know you best, the people who ever said, you need a reference, call me first, or if you're ever looking for another job, you call me first. Make that list of people and get on the horn and just call them up. It's funny. It's like, oh God, people don't want to be bothered with this, but everyone you call, they've had to do the same thing at some time in their career.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with it. And some people aren't going to get back with you. Let's face it. They won't, but that's okay.
Let's go back to the cake.
Uh-huh.
I love that cake because it's a great example of what I'm talking about. How far is too far? Because, I'm like, well, did you send them a video? What did you do that's different from all the other applicants? But I think too far is too far. Like the cake guy didn't work out so well. How would you coach me?
Like there's this one lady, I remember I was coaching her and she's like, well, I'll tell you what, if it's a job that I really want and I don't hear back, I go into that office and I sit there in the front office and I tell them I'm not leaving until somebody talks to me. And I'm like, well, you know, you want a interview, not a restraining order.
Right. That's that's a little bit scary.
but but I, if you've not heard back, and if you even get just a little bite of interest, you can take it to the next level. But don't take it from here to here like overnight. I mean, it's kind of like dating, right? I mean, it's like, you went out on one date, and you're not giving an engagement ring to her the next date. I mean, you gotta be somewhat savvy and somewhat smart about it too. And there's a lot of times you see these ridiculous things at the end of cover letters that say, or pardon me, of job postings, it says no calls.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so then you send out your resume, and then you don't hear anything back, and it's like, well, did they get my resume? But they said no calls. So if I call them, are they going to be mad because I checked in to see if my and so
What's
you
the
play
answer?
these games that are just like it's unfair to the job seeker. And I to the employer's point, I get it. Job boards like mine and Monster and Indeed and all like that, they're getting 600 resumes for that one job, and they can't talk to everybody. I get that as well. So it's this kind of balance, and but we live in an automated society. I mean, there's no reason why people can't have an automated email that goes back to everyone who's applied saying, thank you very much, we're honored you wanted to work for us, and if you don't hear from us in a couple weeks, please know that you're keeping your resume on file, and if something else comes, just something to give them some kind of sense of, okay, at least they
Looks
have
like
my resume. And
I'm not going to get this one, but they were nice. Well, okay, so if I send them my resume and I think I'm a good fit, and they say no calls and I don't get a call, at the very least, I'm going to send a copy of the resume and a cover letter on a piece of paper in an envelope with a stamp. Is that kind of to me it just feels like you have to try harder, and like I don't see it happening. Am I crazy?
yeah, no, you're not. And what I tell people is that, number one, follow all the rules. Do your resume, get your cover letter in. If they're asking for references, even if they're asking for salary stuff, I mean, it's, if you don't send it in, then, that's just a reason why they won't consider you at all.
Right.
And then do the dogged research. Look on LinkedIn. See if there's anybody at that company that you know. See if there's anybody who used to work there that you know. See if that manager went to your college and there's a connection through the alumni association that might be able to get you in to talk to somebody. See if there's any other kinds of connections that you might have for that company. You may not. But then, just start getting as much as you can, to get on their radar, to say, what, look, I'm not just some random job seeker. Because I tell you what, the people who make up statistics, they say that 60% of people are hired based on references and referrals.
Mm.
And it's it is a big deal. I mean, companies actually pay their employees referral bonuses. So because, the people at companies, who knows better is going to fit in that company culture. But I'll tell you one other thing, Brad, that's really important. And again, I go back to the dating idea. This is like dating, except, all of a sudden you get some interest from somebody,
Right.
and you're like going, oh God, it's awesome. Look at me. I'm so happy. They really know me and they understand me. And then you go in and then you start talking to people, and then all of a sudden they give you a job offer. And you're going, oh my God, this is great. This is wonderful. And it's kind of like an engagement or a wedding. It's like, there's wedding bells. But ask yourself, do you really know the company? Do you know the job? Do you understand what you're committing yourself to? Because I've seen so many people who take jobs because they're so happy they got a job offer, but they didn't really understand the culture of that company or what it was all about. And you can get that by asking questions during the interview. You can go to some of the websites where oh gosh, what's the really good one? It's just
Glass
blanking my mind.
is
But
that Glassdoor or something like that?
Glassdoor, yeah. And it's kind of like the Yelp for employees, where they can go on and tell you what it's like to work at this company or that company. And take it with a grain of salt, but make
Yeah, but
sure you're also doing the work to understand that you're going to commit to somebody or to this company, and with a good sense that you're going into this relationship,
Right.
committed.
Yeah, but I call politely, respectfully, I call bullshit.
That's fine.
Because I'm picturing however long you've been out of work, it feels longer, right? You feel like I've been rejected, it's been too long, and then someone gives you a job offer, and then Andrew Hudson saying, "Oh, we really might not want to take this job. You really want to think about it." I'm like, "How? That's of course they want that job."
No, I get that. You're right. I mean, you got to pay the bills. You got a mortgage. Yeah, right. You need the money, whatever. I mean, I get that. You're totally right. But I'm just thinking more holistically. It's like, let's say after the pandemic's over and more opportunities are available.
Yeah.
My biggest goal when I talk to a job seeker is to get them to think about what is it that they really want to do, and is there a path to that, and is it something that they're interested in, and is it their passion, is it something? Because I tell you, I mean, have met. I call it the mid-career life crisis. It's where people come to me and they say, "God, Andrew, I thought for the last 20 years this was what I was supposed to be doing, and I don't like it, or that my boss sucks, or I hate the company, or whatever it is," and that's not good either. You know.
Yeah, it's such a balance. Because yeah, I have never really been in a job search, at least a traditional one. So, I mean, I'm the first one to tell you I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I have been watching my family of liberal arts grads, get out in the job market, and here's what I'm seeing. You're right, spot on. Their ability to stand up and say, "Actually, I am pretty freaking good at this, and I would love to work with you." That is hard for them. But also, what's hard is knowing what they want. So you mentioned laser focus. Successful people are laser focused. They don't know, and I don't. What would you tell them? Like, I don't know. I'm an English major. How do I know what I want?
Well, I think this is very particular to recent grads, and so I
Yeah,
think particularly with recent graduates, that decade, your 20s to your 30s, um, that is your pay your dues decade. That is the decade where you're right. You don't know what you're really good at. I mean, I didn't know I was going to be a press secretary. I mean, I didn't even know what a press secretary was. But all of a sudden, it's like I started being an assistant press secretary, and I started figuring out, wow, I really like this, and I'm actually damn good at it. And I've known other people who, it's taken them 2 or 3 jobs before they've kind of said, oh, you know what? I'm really good at social media marketing. This is what I like to do. It's fun. I wake up in the morning excited to go to work. I leave work feeling like I've accomplished something,
right.
and I'm good. And people around me, they know I'm good at it, and they are asking me. But you're right though. It's not going to happen just like lightning hits you. Um, but
Yeah,
I do suggest that people do know what they like, and they do have a sense of what it is they're good at. Like even a recent grad, they know what they're good at. I mean, and it could have been a club that they belong to in college that really got them excited. It could have been a particular area of their studies that was just they excelled at. It could just be, sitting down with somebody and saying, hey, you know what? You're an excellent writer. You're an excellent analyst. You can take problems and just helping those undergrads really maybe get a sense of, what is valuable in terms of their skill sets as well.
yeah, that was solid gold right there, Mr. Hudson. Um, your 20s are your pay your dues decade.
Yeah, I mean, some people are like, no, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. They know very clearly, and that's what they did. Or I'm going to be an engineer. But a lot of liberal arts majors, you're right. I mean, it's like, I remember when I graduated from college, and my was all happy, and I went up to my dad, and he says, "Oh, so what are you going to do now? Open up an English store?"
Ah, your dad,
Like,
so
thanks,
loving.
Dad. But it was worse as I went up to the president of the university, and I'm like, give me some advice. I was at my graduation. I'm like, I'm a recent liberal arts grad. I said, just, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go. He says, what one piece of advice would you give me? And he
Ah,
looks down at me, and he gets a big grin on his face, and he says, never, ever, ever forget to pay your alumni dues.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes.
How disappointing.
Oh, it was completely disappointing. I was like, here this guy is. He's got 3 PhDs, and I'm like, and he works with college kids, and it's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. His name was
Yeah.
Gordon Gee.
Where is he now? Because that is cold. That is not taking the mentor spirit into to heart. Turkey boots.
But
All right. Thank you. I'm going to switch gears real quick because I don't want to take too much more of your time. Can you tell me how are the jazz musicians doing right now? Because I'm thinking those people are suffering.
oh, it's pretty lousy. I mean, um, well, let me state the obvious. There's no gigs. I mean, the clubs are having to close down. A lot of the government regulations seemed really ridiculous. Like right at the beginning, when they were starting to allow 50% back into the clubs, they were saying that horn players couldn't play because they were blowing air from their horns and it was infecting the air. And the trumpet players and the trombone players and the sax players and everybody, they got together and they proved without a doubt that that just was not true. They're not spraying everybody with COVID bop or whatever. And the singers had to sing behind plexiglass, which I get that. I mean, that was like choirs apparently, that was a big deal. And singers, they are actually they're spraying. I mean, they're
Right.
singing. So, but nonetheless, the clubs, and particularly here in Denver, I will tell you, you know, um, Dazzle Jazz, which has just been this amazing resource for musicians even before COVID, and for just people who like jazz. They have stepped up to the plate in so many ways. We just did a concert there. It was streamed, and we got paid. And they also have a food bank down at Dazzle right now for the musician community. And they have tons of canned food and
Oh,
vegetables and mac and cheese and beef stroganoff and everything you could possibly need. And all you have to do is show up at Dazzle, and they've got certain hours. You go to dazzlejazz.com. But even if you showed up and you just knocked on the door and there's someone there, they're going to open it up and say, "Come on in, take whatever it is you want."
oh,
And on the flip side of that, my favorite jazz club that I've been playing at for 15 years, the El Chapultepec, they closed. And I remember you and I sitting outside the door on Market Street listening to Freddie Rodriguez and all those great jazz musicians when we were 17 years old and hoping we could sit in every once in a while. And that was really traumatic, I think, for Denver and for all the musicians who have, and
yeah,
the stories online that I heard over from different people and different things about their experiences at the El Chapultepec. And you know, I'm not gonna candy coat it. The place was a dive.
yeah.
But that was why it was so cool.
I feel so mixed about Chapultepec because it wasn't a good place to listen to jazz in so many ways. It was too noisy and it was hard to get a good place to sit so you're standing um but yeah, it just had such tradition. I felt so sad.
Well, I talked to so many people who were like calling me because I was kind of helping the owners manage their announcement of the closing and
Oh,
everything. And they were calling me and they were saying, "Hey, can you tell them we'd love to keep it going and we'd love to renovate that spot and we'll keep the name the El Chapultepec." And I was in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, the minute you clean the bathrooms, then it's not the El Chapultepec anymore.
that was a tiny ass horrible bathroom. Well, but also, like, not to be too cynical, but the writing was on the wall for that place for ages because it was right next to a ballpark suddenly.
Yeah. Well, I've played there for 15 years, and the really the height of the jazz time really ended about after Coors Field came in, because now all of a sudden you had and all of Lodo, the development of Lodo. I mean, you had all of these young kids coming in, and they, I don't know, for the past 15 years they've only had jazz there on Thursdays and Wednesdays. The rest of the time it was they're having rock bands and blues bands and R&B bands, and it's all good music and it was still a good hang, but the days of, those great jazz musicians who would slip down there from the Gibson jazz concerts, or they were, Jerry Krantz, the owner, would hire them to come into town to play, and it was smoke filled and wall to wall people, and you were there to hear the jazz. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience. I mean, it was just a totally different vibe, you know. But and then again on the other side, jazz musicians. I think that when we come out from this whole COVID thing, this pent up. I mean, this has been like a live music desert. People are so thirsty for music, and I think it's just going to be an incredible period of time in our lives when we finally get people out there.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those people that craves it. I crave hugs really badly, and live music and live comedy, and also I just want to be one of the people on stage. I crave an audience.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Hey, Mateo, I'm almost done, but I'll be out in a minute. Okay, buddy? Okay, I'll be out there in a minute. But I'm doing an interview.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, Mateo's timing is good. I'm going to end with one question that I've been asking everybody at the end about hope. And you kind of hinted early in this conversation where you're going to go with this, but this could be hope, Andrew, about your career or about jazz or about Denver or about COVID. You've kind of hinted, I kind of hint that, or my gut says you're going to go with this bloom after COVID, but Andrew Hudson, what gives you hope?
Perseverance. Hope gives me hope. I mean, creativity gives me hope. It's funny, during this whole COVID thing, I came upon an article that was written by this think tank, and it was written around the year 2000. And it was something like the top 50 accomplishments in the United States from the end of World War II to 2000. And it's so many things that we just take for granted, and they're major, major deals. The highway system, clean water, widespread education and higher education, cares for disease, so many things that we as a country we did this. It was these incredible things that happened after World War II, which was not just a little over 50 years. And you think about all the things, computers, putting a man on the moon, these incredible accomplishments. And we've proven with this vaccine that we still have that in us, and we prove it every day. And I think that coming out of this, it's given people perspective. It's given people this sense of, what is it that we take for granted and what are we going to not take for granted? And, I'm really hopeful that, we're going to look at this in a very different way.
Mic drop.
Oh, I thought that was a fist bump. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I can do that too. Yeah, we give it a hug. Everybody, this is Andrew Hudson, Andrew Hudson's joblist.com. Andrew, stay with me just for a second as we finish this up. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.